Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today and happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So, Interware's role in this Awareness Month is providing helpful resources to give you and your users a better understanding and knowledge of the most basic yet overlooked in cybersecurity, which are enabling multi factor authentication, recognizing and reporting phishing, using a password manager, and updating your software. This week, we are focusing on email security and phishing training to be led by Marcus Ge, Interware's Head of Governance, Risk, and Compliance. Marcus, the mic is yours.
Okay, so hope everybody can hear me okay. Hope everyone is having a great day so far and had a great long weekend. So for those of you that are common here for our webinars, it's not the first time that I'm here, so it's great to be able to, be here again today and share some great information with the attendees here. So yeah, I see just some people are coming in now, but yeah, let's get started. So I think everybody can see my screen here. This is the email security and phishing webinar. So like Camille said, we'll be covering some topics today on specifically phishing and how that whole environment is right now together with the threat landscape. I'll try to get some more information to what the latest and greatest types of attacks that are happening today in the form of phishing. This is just actually one of our many aspects of our GRC team that we provide to our customers. And just today, we'll kind of give everybody a sneak peek into what this is exactly. So maybe people here can get some great nuggets of information, understand a little bit more about how to approach your own users and customers on how to protect themselves. So with that being said, let me just start by introducing myself. So like Camille said, I am, rather, my name is Marcus, and I'm the head of governance, risk, and compliance here at Interware. Um, so it's a very, very hot topic, phishing and email security. Actually, I've attended a couple of conferences in the past few weeks, and this seems to be the number one thing that everybody is talking about. So I'm glad that everybody is here. You're actually part of a really, really important um, piece of content here that we offer. Uh, yeah, just a little bit more about me. I guess obviously I like cybersecurity, but one of my actual personal hobbies is I like to watch movies. Actually, I really enjoy the older Disney flicks these days. Just really great quality screenwriting and voice acting all around. So before I kind of get started, let me kind of bring us up to speed about what Inware is. And I've talked about this before for those of you that have been in the past webinars of mine, but this is our 39th year in business. We're definitely not a green sprout in this field. Okay, we have a lot of experience, a lot of expertise, and you can kind of think of us as your friendly neighborhood IT and security specialists. So yeah, speaking of movies, let me start off with a little bit of an analogy here. So let's just say you are you're out there surfing the World Wide Web. You're just a blue tangfish exploring and finding the possibilities. As you're looking around, all around you, you see vast expanses of information and possibility. Kind of going around, you come across a piece of light here. This light looks very alluring. It's just the only light in the distance. It could be food, it could be family. It could be the way to bring you back home. You've been lost for a couple of days now. What could this really be, right? Does anybody have any guesses? It's an anglerfish, ready to have his next lunch. And what is this phenomenon really? Okay, so the whole anecdote aside, animals in the animal kingdom today adapt and change to fit their surroundings. And this one in the world focuses on disguise, right? Everybody is aware of the famous anglerfish, how they have a bioluminescent bulb in front of them to attract prey, deceiving others and tricking others into thinking that they're safe when actually they're about to become a meal, right? We talk about this oftentimes, even in the cybersecurity world, right? A lot of these people that you meet online are actually just wolf in sheep's clothing, right? Just like being eaten by an anglerfish basically means the end of your existence. Getting caught by a phishing email is probably equally as bad, right? There are some phishing emails out there where, they're not just looking for, some money. They're not just looking for, your banking info. Some of these phishing emails can bring down entire companies, right? That's a big deal. So today we'll help you to identify what's the bad light, as you're swimming around in the World Wide Web, and what is the good light, right? Just like how Nemo and his other aquatic friends adapt themselves to recognize the anglerfish light as a threat, we also, as humans, we need to adapt and overcome the possibilities of all these phishing attacks. We need to be able to um, identify what is a good light and what's a bad light. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into the actual meat of the presentation. So what is phishing really? Phishing, if you were to look it up on a textbook, it is a type of fraudulent email designed to trick a person into revealing sensitive information or to deploy malware, right? So this is a very standard form of social engineering. It actually is the most common form of social engineering and the most effective. Okay, social engineering, for those of you that do not know, is the act of someone pretending to be someone that you know, and that someone is not who they claim to be. For those of you that don't know, social engineering is actually the number one strongest and significant factor of compromise and breach. Over 91% of compromises and breaches come from a form of phishing. So, how do you protect yourself in today's environment the most effectively? Stop social engineering. Be able to recognize these threats. Okay. Speaking of some statistics, let's go over some just very, very standard statistics here. I'm not going to go through all of them. I've been through some of them already for those of them in the past webinars, but I'm just going to list some off that I find is really, really effective. So specifically in 2022 alone, and we're about more than halfway, 6 billion attacks are expected to occur. In 2021, last year, phishing attacks have quadrupled over the last year. 1 in 99 emails is a phishing attack. And this may not scare you, but actually 25% of those emails make their way into your Office 365 mailbox, right? So, 30% of phishing emails are opened, and phishing websites have doubled. Phishing attacks have increased 400%, quadrupled year over year, like I said. So it's a big deal. The point I'm trying to make in this entire slide is that phishing is a big deal, and especially for small and medium-sized organizations, and even large-sized organizations, as we're about to see, you guys get affected the most. Okay, so it's time we arm ourselves with the knowledge to protect against it. I'm going to go over an interesting case study here. So I'm glad today I have more time to talk about it because usually I only have about 5 minutes. But yeah, you guys are stuck with listening to me for the next 30. But yeah, no, I'm really excited to talk about this one. This one is Uber. Some of you may not even know this because of how recent this really is. Uber was recently attacked by social engineering, and they got hacked. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, essentially what happened is the attacker gained access to the company systems. They found an individual employee and they repeatedly sent them multi-factor authentication login emails. So you know how you have on your phone, you get a text that says, "Oh, here's a multi-factor code," right? Like a 6-digit code or something like that. After about more than an hour, the attacker contacted the same person on WhatsApp, pretending to be an Uber IT person and saying that the MFA notifications would stop once the target approved the login. Something so simple like this, a simple trick like this, and that's exactly how they got into the system. So we talk about MFA fatigue or exhaustion. This is the concept where people take advantage of authentication systems in which the account owners simply have to approve a login through a push notification on their phone or something. And once they provide this randomly generated code, then the resulting person, the attacker, would get access. These type of MFA prompt phishes have become more and more popular with the attackers. And the attacker themselves, they were actually claiming to be an 18-year-old. So it's, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. This hacker claimed that they were able to access resources shared on the network that included scripts for Microsoft Automation in their PowerShell program. Um, so, overall, this is a huge debacle. We all have to understand, whether you're a big, medium, or small size organization, everyone is a target, right? And if you think you're small and this is not a big deal to you, you think again, right? Because like Uber came up into the news because of its publicity, but that doesn't mean that small and medium-sized organizations are not being attacked. These guys get attacked every single day, right? So what we really try to teach to people here today is that, well, first of all, if you don't have MFA, have MFA. Okay, this is the bare minimum. And now what we're trying to explain is that attackers have moved on a dimension or a step above MFA. They have found that, okay, so even if you do have MFA, I'm going to find ways to bypass that. And that's just how fast this industry is moving today. So that's why it's very important for your organization and especially your IT professionals to really keep ahead of the curve and understand what is the latest kind of threat and how to counteract against that. Okay, so let's go into some basic signs of phishing. So I'm going to go into a little bit of the weeds here, and I'm going to do this in the context of today, like today, October 2022. Not last year, not 5 years ago, not 10 years ago. We're going to talk about what is phishing today. What level has phishing upgraded to the point of where these hackers are using more and more complex ways to attack us. Okay, so first of all, suspicious attachments. Okay, I'm sure everybody knows this. Everybody's family member knows this. Suspicious attachments, links, things you don't want to click on, right? I think everybody would know that already. But actually, it's gotten even more deeper than that. There are more sophisticated levels of phishing emails where there are no attachments and no links. And just because you think there is no attachments, no links, sometimes that gives people that false sense of security, right? That gives them the idea that, oh, there's no links, there's no attachments in this email. I'm safe. I can click on it, or I can reply to this person, or I can communicate with them. No, it's not the case. Sometimes people use unfamiliar domain names. This is still a tried and true way to find out. A call to action, almost always, and a sense of urgency. This is the phishing attacker's main weapon. And, unsurprisingly, it actually happens to be something that is not black and white, right? Sometimes as a person, as a professional, you have to be able to diagnose whether something is a phishing attack or not. You have to know whether there's a sense of urgency and if this seems like a strange email, right? So let's talk about what are the different ways that you could be phished, right? Now that we've kind of identified what are the ways you can identify it, or rather, what are the main factors of phishing? Let's talk about some techniques of phishing, okay? So now, normally through Interware, when we do these kind of training awareness webinars, we go out there and we give a full webinar, all the information, everything you need. And today, because we don't have all the time, I'm going to go over the main basic bits. And I'm going to try to impart onto you not the point, but rather the spirit of how things are being done. Okay, so here I have listed a couple of examples of phishing scams. There are tech support phishing scams, spear phishing spams, excuse me, clone phishing scams, whale phishing scams. There's something called smishing, which is when you use an SMS phone and text messages to phish somebody. And last of all, there's MFA fatigue, right? So that's what we just talked about with Uber. Again, I won't go through all of these as we don't have the time. That's usually rather in our actual awareness training that we provide. But today we'll talk about some important ones together. Okay. So first off, let's talk about this email, and I'm going to go into a deep example. Okay. And for everybody that's watching, I want to maybe encourage a little bit of participation. Just kind of look at this email first and think to yourself, what is the problem with this email? Right? Let's just say, you woke up in the morning, you're checking your emails, this email came in. Now, what about this email do you think can look fishy to you? right? I'll give everybody some time to think about it, maybe about 10 seconds. It's from a person. His name is John Tunker. He's trying to talk to this person called Meta. You know, it seems like this person's asking for something. There's no link. There's no attachment. So I'll just give the answer. The problem with this one is the domain of the email. Okay, so if you guys look into where I'm pointing at, Office CEO1 at earthlink.net, this is the domain, rather the earthlink.net is the domain of the email that doesn't match with the person that they're trying to message, right? So this person that they're trying to message, Meta, is from a domain called the SSL store, right? And the number one thing that you always want to look at, this is a tried and true method. Always look at the domain first, okay? Looking at the domain about 90% of the time, I would say, 90 or 80% of the time, the domain is an easy giveaway, okay? So if anything, if you guys forget everything else during this webinar, the only one thing I want people to take away from this webinar to protect themselves and their family and their coworkers is always check the domain of the email that's coming in, okay? And I don't mean look at this pink logo. Don't look at the fact that it says John Tunker. Don't look at the actual name of this. This is all spoofed, right? It's all fake. What they cannot fake is the actual email coming in, right? And this is when you can see, oh, this email is definitely wrong. Because nobody I know is from a company called earthlink.net, right? Another thing I want to point out is, like I said, the sense of urgency. So, this person saying, I want a swift email response. I want something right now. Are you available right now? This needs to be done right now. This sense of urgency, regardless of how the phishing email is pointed out, always exists. So that's the number 2 most important thing that you want to look at. Okay, so let's kind of summarize what's going on here. Essentially, number 1, you want to make sure that the domain of the email is accurate. Okay, in this case, it's not. That's a dead giveaway. But let's say that even the domain is accurate, right? Let's say it says the SSLstore.com. Okay, I could go into further detail about how people can even spoof the email, the domain of an email, right? But let's just say that's all fine. What about the email looks a bit off to you, right? So, well, first of all, they're asking for something that's a swift email response, right? Now, I'm not saying that this John Tunker person, the real John Tunker, will not ask for something urgent, but as a person working in today's world, you always have to double check and have a bit of thought before you approach these emails, right? You always want to have a bit of skepticism. And that's your first hint, is that there's something urgent that this John wants done right now, which is the first, and that is why I will immediately take a step back and think about this email before I do anything. Okay, so let's move on to the next example. Here's another example of a phishing email that you guys may be aware of. But here, right here we have, support email. I'll give everybody about 10 seconds. You guys can take a look at it. Tell me what's wrong with it. Actually, it's already been highlighted, so it's even easier for you. But, just take a look at it and, try to figure out what's wrong. So here it says, to your customer, your Apple ID has been blocked for security reason. Please validate your account. From an email called Apple Support. Okay, so, well, first of all, I'm going to give the answer. Let's try to get some basic stuff out of the way, okay? First of all, there's some grammatical errors. And I don't like to talk about this too much because this is just way too basic, okay? This may be a low-level crafted email because, for example, the Apple is not capitalized, the ID is not capitalized. They said security reason instead of reasons. These are very, very basic, elementary, rudimentary level phishing emails. But I don't want to prepare people for that low level of phishing email, okay? Because at any point a phisher or a scammer can simply improve their English, right? It's not hard. Like they could send they could send a grammatically correct email. Does that mean you're suddenly going to believe everything that they say? No, right? So the actual problem with this email and what I want people to see here is in some cases, the domain will look good, right? Support at apple.com. Apple.com, that is the real domain, right? Support at apple.com is an actual email. It is definitely legitimate. So the domain looks good and the name looks good. Apple support looks good. Everything looks good. There's no attachments. How can you tell what the problem is, right? This is what we call advanced level of phishing because they're using a technique here, which is called puny code phishing. And I go into this a little bit more in depth in my series of training of awareness training. But puny code phishing essentially is the use of ASCII characters. ASCII characters is a simple alphabetical online way to map the English language into readable content. And sometimes what people will do is they'll take another language like Greek or Russian, and then they'll bring over characters that look almost identical to the English, and then post that as the email address. So what you'll see is a perfectly accurate email address. But if you were to look into it, actually they're using, A from the Russian language, O from the Greek language, and stuff like that. So it's obviously a fake email, right? And now you might be looking at me saying, what do I do then, right? I don't have the technical background to review every single email and check if the language is even English. How do I even know? It looks like it looks legitimate to me. Here's the long story short, right? It may not be possible for some of you to tell, right? It involves looking into the technical properties of the email, and that may be beyond the field of some people, right? So in this case, to avoid the risk of compromising your company, because at the end, all it really takes is one click. You have to develop that sense, that sense of, oh, something's wrong. Something looks a little bit off. Okay. Because at the end of the day, every phishing email wants something from you. And you have to be able to have the sense, just like any aquatic animal swimming around, right? To look at that light and say, well, something looks fishy. Something looks a little bit off. Okay. So I guess to kind of summarize here, right? Today, I mean, in this specific example, we talked about the concept of puny code phishing as a slightly higher level of phishing, where they can even spoof the email domain. But at the end of the day, always check out for that sense of urgency. Always check out for whatever they're requesting from you, and always be on the lookout for the overall domain of the email. Okay. Great. So now the next question is, okay, so let's say you've identified an email. What do I do if I believe an email is a phish? Okay, so let's talk about some best practices here. Number one, always keep informed about phishing techniques. The very fact that you're standing here or you're sitting here listening to this webinar, finding out more about phishing emails, that's a great first step, right? Next up is you have to know how to detect phishing emails. And this webinar kind of taught you the same thing. So that's two birds with one stone. Please think before you click, keep your browser up to date, be wary of pop-ups, and make sure that you don't plug unknown USBs into your computer. Okay, don't surf suspicious websites. And most importantly, don't do anything rash. When you look at an email and they're coming in, make sure that you can always confirm the source of the email. Okay, you have to develop that sense. Okay. Essentially, the concept of a tried and true 100% guaranteed way of detecting an email is gone, right? The technology improvements, the advancements, the speed at which these hackers are growing is far exceeding the pace that a lot of these workers can come up with. So really right now, more than ever, there is an extremely high demand or a need for your company and your users to know how to identify what is a phishing email, right? Like I said earlier, 91% of breaches come from phishing emails. If you do this alone, if you as an organization's management or an organization's IT take the time to actually train your employees, bring them into a webinar, do some training with them, you've eliminated 91% of the possibility of your organization even being hacked, right? Sure, you can get a bunch of other stuff, but this is so important that doing this alone is a huge step towards protecting and securing your organization, right? Having a talk with your having a talk with your service provider, having a talk with us, talk to us about it. I've seen this email, it's come in, what should I do, right? The GRC team, myself, and somebody else from my team could come in and properly give you the information that you need, because again, all it takes is one click. All it takes is one click. Yep. So on the second page of best practices here, again, never open up attachments from untrusted emails addresses. I don't talk about this too much. This is way too archaic. It's too much of an old method, right? We almost never talk about opening attachments anymore, right? Because at this point, we expect everybody to know. And if you don't know, well, then it's important to know. Because at this point, attackers have gone beyond this level already, right? Some of them don't even send you attachments anymore because it's so common sense. So at the end of the day, it becomes this race, right? It becomes this arms race. So, the end user becomes a little bit smart, then the hacker becomes a little bit smarter, then the end user has to be smarter now because the hacker became smarter, and then it's just a race back and forth, back and forth. Never give out personal information. Please use antivirus software. And we're not just talking about using basic software. If you are if you are in an organization, if you're in an enterprise, just the typical Microsoft Defender is not going to cut it, right? You want to have something that is more industry grade, right? These days, we all talk about having an EDR platform, right? An endpoint detection and response, or an XDR platform, right? Please avoid password reuse. We'll talk about this in next week's webinar about proper password policy in our webinar. But yeah, try to avoid password reuse. If you believe you opened a malicious attachment or you followed a malicious link, please make sure that you contact. Well, not specifically. You want to be able to contact your service provider, right? And if you don't have a service provider, now might be the time to talk to Interware about it, right? And I covered this a couple times already, but the idea of simulated phishing attacks is an extremely effective method, because what you can do is you can send out these fake attacks. There's no payload behind them, and even if your employees click on them, there's no downside. There's only upside, right? You send a fake email over to your employees. You find out who opens it. Oh, now you find out who opens it. That's the weakest link in your organization. Okay, you send them to training, you send them to webinars, you educate them. That's how you proactively update your employees' knowledge and turn them into professionals, right? So again, this is something that we do at Interware. We do this all the time. We send out phishing attacks. We send out simulated phishing emails, and there has been nothing but great results when we do this. So again, highly recommend anybody listening here to give this a try. Okay, if you want to have some more information, feel free to ask me. We have a lot of facets in which we can do this. But okay, so that's it. So I think that's the end of the presentation. I'm kind of open up for Q&A. So if anybody has any questions or topics or ideas that they want to bring up, feel free to bring it up with me, and I will happily discuss it with everybody here.
Interware offers a How to Spot Phishing email guideline documentation in our awareness training service. We also have a security awareness workshop for employees, training them directly. In this workshop, we test who the weak links are in the organization so we could train them accordingly. This workshop will be a more in-depth approach to security awareness training and yield significant results.
If you're interested in the full version and more in-depth of Interware cybersecurity awareness training, please reach us through info@interware.ca, and we can talk about how we can help you implement a security awareness training for your organization.